welcome to First Chapter Friday. My name is Lucy, and the book that I am going to be reading the first chapter of today is called Holes by Sachar. This book was written in 1998. It won the Newbery Award and the National Book Award, and it is a classic. This is the story of a boy named Stanley Yelnats. Yelnats is Stanley spelled backwards, and he has been wrongfully accused of stealing a pair of sneakers. So he ends up at a detention camp for boys in Texas. And at this camp, the boys are made to dig holes all day in the hot sun. They don't know why, but this is what they do all day. And Stanley starts to realize that the boys aren't just digging for no reason and digging to build character. They are digging to find something. And Stanley thinks he might know where and what. And that is the gist of what I'm going to give you about the plot of Holes. Because you might have read it, it's such a classic, and you will know how great it is. If you haven't read it, I would suggest that once you finish watching this, you get your hands on it and you read it. It's really, really good. It's funny. It's got great friendships. It's just great, and read it. So I am going to read the first chapter of Holes. Part 1. You are entering Camp Green Lake. Chapter 1. There is no lake in Camp Green Lake. There once was a very large lake here, the largest lake in Texas. That was over 100 years ago. Now it's just a dry, flat wasteland. There used to be a town of Green Lake as well. The town shriveled and dried up along with the lake and the people who lived there. During the summer, the daytime temperature hovers around 95 degrees in the shade, if you can find any shade. There's not much shade in a big dry lake. The only trees are 2 old oaks on the eastern edge of the lake. A hammock is stretched between the 2 trees, and a log cabin stands behind that. The campers are forbidden to lie in the hammock. It belongs to the warden. The warden owns the shade. Out on the lake, rattlesnakes and scorpions find shade under rocks and in the holes dug by the campers. Here's a good rule to remember about rattlesnakes and scorpions. If you don't bother them, they won't bother you. Usually. Being bitten by a scorpion or even a rattlesnake is not the worst thing that can happen to you. You won't die. Usually. Sometimes a camper will try to be bitten by a scorpion or even a small rattlesnake. Then he will get to spend a day or 2 recovering in his tent instead of having to dig a hole out on the lake. But you don't want to be bitten by a yellow spotted lizard. That's the worst thing that can happen to you. You will die a slow and painful death. Always. If you get bitten by a yellow spotted lizard, you might as well go into the shade of the oak trees and lie in the hammock. There is nothing anyone can do to you anymore. And that is the end of chapter 1. It's very short and sweet. And in fact, the following chapter, chapter 2, is so short, it's just half a page that I'm going to read that too. Here's chapter 2. The reader's probably asking, why would anyone go to Camp Green Lake? Most campers weren't given a choice. Camp Green Lake is a camp for bad boys. If you take a bad boy and make him dig a hole every day in the hot sun, it will turn him into a good boy. That was what some people thought. Stanley Yelnats was given a choice. The judge said, you may go to jail, or you may go to Camp Green Lake. Stanley was from a poor family. He'd never been to camp before. So those are actually the first 2 chapters of Holes by Sachar. And if you want more of this great book, which again, I highly recommend if you've not read it, and even if you have read it, maybe you should reread it. It's such a great book. Thanks for joining me.